If you're thinking about buying a Chevy Cruze, in particularly the 2010s through, I don't know, like maybe 15s, whatever this gen is, I'm giving you a heads up not to do it. All cars have problems, but this is the most problematic car that I've ever had in my 34 years of living on this earth. And I hate to knock Chevy, but I bought this car for my wife about 6 months ago. And of course, I didn't do much research on it. It was a nice car. The price wasn't bad. And my brother had just bought a 2011 Chevy Cruze LT a month before. So my wife really liked his car. She said, hey, I want a Chevy Cruze. She had had an '09 Toyota Corolla for about 6 years. So I said, okay, well, it's a nice little car. The first month and a half, it ran fine. It was great on gas. It's very small, but we love this car. All the technology in it, I mean, it was a great car. But after a month and a half, with only 159,000 miles on it, this car became a living nightmare. And I have put more money into this car than any vehicle I think I ever had in my life. So everything that's gone wrong on this car, this is the 1.8. My brother has his 11 Cruze LT has the 1.4 turbo. And he, his took about 2 or 3 months before it started going bad. But I thought, well, maybe it's just it. So the first thing was the valve covers. After a month and a half, we started noticing oil. You can see right there, started noticing oil. Checked it out, it was the valve covers. Took everything off, replaced them. Everything was good. Then, about 3 weeks later, the reserve cap broke and it overheated. No big deal, didn't do any damage, replaced that. That ain't nothing. So then we get to going, the air conditioner goes out. Hey, no big deal, we don't have to have it. Well, then, right about almost 2 months of ownership, I have to replace the coils and all the plugs. $200. Again, they wasn't that serious at the time. Started misfiring, check engine light come on. It was a quick fix. So go get an oil change in it one day, running perfect. Get up the next day, it says AC off due to high temperature on the computer. Temperature gauge wouldn't come off cold. So I disconnected the battery terminal, let it sit all night, it reset itself, it fixed that problem. Well then, this little thing back here, whatever it is, started bouncing up and down, and then it started running rough, and then randomly dying. Kept going, every couple days, randomly die, but it would start right back up. So then, at this point, we are having issues with it, overheating occasionally. So I said, well, we'll flush the system. So we flushed the system, and about a week after we flushed the system, this hose back here that goes into the heater core, there's a hose that runs from the thermostat housing, connects to the one that runs out of the reserve back there, those two pipes. So that hose breaks. It was a little plastic piece that connects all three hoses. Cheap little piece. It breaks. I replaced the hose. $50. No big deal. So we replaced the hose, and then a little while later, it runs good for about a month. Well, then it starts saying StabiliTrak, check StabiliTrak. So obviously I'm like, okay, so we check it out. Found out they're saying the coils and plugs are bad on it. Just changed them. So I spend another $200. Change the coils and plugs again, light goes off, traction control light comes on that day. Reset the computer, it goes off. Now I'm doing some of this work and I'm having a mechanic do other parts just to make sure that I'm not doing it wrong. So at this point, I had done it once, mechanic done it once, got worse, whatever. So then it starts having issues where it starts running hot again. So I changed the thermostat housing. That's $200. Okay. Go through, change that to, well, then we've got air in the system. No big deal. Flush the radiator, drain it, bleed it. Well, then about 2 weeks later, we start having oil sludge in the reserve. So we tried some, flush, what have you. Ran it on water for a week, put antifreeze back in it, still got oil in the, sludge in the reserve. Then you can see here, we've got water in the oil. So, blown head gasket. So, I sent it to a mechanic, and I'm not going to tell you guys what I will tell you. I won't tell you how much paid, but I will say they had it for about a month. And they replaced the valve covers again and the head gasket. I'll say it was more than $1,000, less than $2,000. So we just done at this point the coils and plugs twice, the thermostat housing, a hose, radiator flushed, valve covers twice, and now a head gasket. All at this point. That was about late February. This is March 25th, and last Friday, this engine just blew up. And I didn't think it blew up, but we were driving, it got hot, 161,000 miles on it, put about 2,000 miles on it since we've had it. Driving, got hot, shut itself down, got it home. There was water shooting out of this thing, whatever that is. I hadn't really looked into it yet. The engine started smoking right in between here. And I'm like, well, what is it now? At this point, I've paid, almost as much into it as what I paid for the car. So now I've got so much money tied in it. And last Friday, my wife comes home. She said, hey, it got hot. It shut itself off. I've got a tow truck bringing it home. All right. Tow truck took it to the shop, and they just brought it and dropped it back off an hour ago to tell me, even now this is a different company that did the head gasket, that it's going to need a complete new motor, and doing it right is going to probably double what I've already put it into it. This is 6 months of ownership with a 2013 Chevy Cruze. Now, to end the story, my brother recently had to replace the turbo and had to replace his water pump on his 1.4 turbo. And he's already worried that he's got a blown head gasket. Long story short, do not buy a Chevy Cruze.